In today's video, we're going to talk about the focal length that you should choose for street photography. We are going to analyze some of the most popular ones, 24, 35, 50, as well as 85. And I will also give you my personal favorite and my personal kit at the end of the video. Focal length is kind of a personal choice. It depends on tons of factors, like for example, the environment where you are shooting. Let's say you are shooting in a very tight environment. Having a very long focal length might be very hard for you to navigate because you will only be able to photograph bricks. But on the other hand, if you have a very wide angle, but you can't really access the environment that you're trying to shoot, well, you might not be able to capture anything at all. So it really depends on what is your environment and how your focal length can integrate into that. Now, another aspect that is also very important is your subject. Is your subject very easily accessible or not at all? Are you in a particular place where you can get very close and personal with your subjects? Let's say in Japan, you can get close, but it's not very common to go into someone's face and just take a picture of them. But in other cities, it's completely fine to get in the crowd and starting to take pictures of people. It really depends on your subject, whether or not you can walk up to them or you can, have access to them. If you're on a rooftop and you're trying to take pictures of people evolving in the street, it might be difficult to do that with a 24mm and really be able to focus on someone in particular. Now, another aspect that is quite important in my opinion is the feeling that you want to give to the person that is going to see your picture. And this person might be you, might be your client, or might be someone random on the internet. Let's say you want the picture to feel very inclusive, to feel like the person that is looking at that picture was right there next to you. Then a mid-range focal length might be what you're looking for. But if you really want to feel detached and really give some compression aspect, then a telephoto lens might be what you're looking for. And as you can see, there are different aspects right now that I'm mentioning, and there are way more, of course, but I think that those are the three main aspects that you should consider whenever you are looking to choose your focal length for street photography. Okay, so now let's talk about the most popular street photography focal length that you might want to use when going out and shoot. First, you have the 24 or 28mm. This focal length is quite wide and feel very inclusive. If you are trying to give a feeling that the person looking at your picture is really in the middle of the action, then this is a good choice. It also allows you to include most of the environment that you're shooting in. So if the subject is important, but also the environment is maybe slightly more important than your subject, then I think that the 24 and the 28mm is a good choice to capture whatever you're trying to. It really allows you to give that feeling that you're very close to the subject, the people, the action, and it's very good for also establishing shots whenever you are trying to give context or you are trying to give more information on where you are and where you are evolving. 24, 28mm is something that I try to reach for. Next, we have the 35mm, and I think that this focal length is one of the most versatile focal lengths that you can use. It is wide, but not too wide, allows you to focus on your subject and your environment with some kind of balance. Both feel equally important and is ideal if you want to give this kind of environmental portrait that allows you to understand where the subject is evolving in terms of context without having to be too close to the subject and basically be in their face. And this focal length is basically the do everything kind of focal. It's usually, if you pick this focal, you pretty much don't need anything else. And this is also the focal length that I often advise as your first prime. Because of its versatility, you will be able to shoot many things with it, and you will be able to pretty much put it in your bag, don't think too much about it, and wherever you go, usually you will be able to take good pictures with it. Now let's talk about the 50mm. 50mm is basically nifty 50. It is also a versatile lens. However, compared to the 35mm, you will focus more on the subject aspect. The shots that you take with a 50mm will feel a little bit more isolated and a little bit more focused on details and the subject itself. Personally, I really like the 50mm focal length because for me it is very versatile, and while I won't be able to include so much environment compared to a 35mm, I still feel like it gives me enough context for me to understand what is going on in the frame and in the context. Also, it gives me this little extra reach, which usually the way I shoot makes me more comfortable instead of going to people's face directly. Finally, let's talk about the 85mm, which is kind of a less popular choice when it comes to street photography. However, there are some people who do love shooting with 85mm, so I think that it's important to mention it. When you use the 85mm, which is basically the start of the telephoto, you are solely focusing on the subject or focusing on details. Now, if you don't do that, you basically need way more reach to be able to include the environment. However, the 85mm is a lens that will start basically compressing the environment way more. So having street photography with an 85mm forces you to focus on the compression and the layers in the picture to make sure that you get a good composition. And another important aspect is that the pictures that you get with an 85 feels more like an observation point of view. You feel way more detached from the scene compared to, let's say, the 35 or 28 or even 50. There is the kind of distance that you can feel in your picture, and if that's the feeling that you want to give, then totally fine, you can go with an 85. However, if you really want that inclusivity or that part of the action kind of feeling, then definitely go lower than that. And 85 is also even trickier when it comes to composition in tight environments. I think that to go with the 85, you need not only wide environment, but also environments with depth. If you're shooting in tiny streets that don't necessarily have much depth, I think that the 85 is a little bit tricky to work with. So keep that in mind if that's something that you want to explore. I would say 85 is doable, but is very geared towards some specific kind of environments where you have the depth to work with. Alright, so now that you know a little bit about the focal length that are usually used, let's talk about what I personally like using. And while I mentioned separate focal lengths, I personally like working with combination of two. The 27mm or 28, as well as the 50mm focal length. And this translates basically with the 33mm f1.4 as well as the 18mm f1.4. This gives me a good combo to cover both wide as well as not so wide environment where I can focus more on my subject. It can also help me reach to further away subject and to also still give some details about those. And finally, it also allows me to go for two different kind of feelings, right? 27 is I'm really in the action and I really try to get in the crowd kind of shots, while the 50mm is a little bit further away, or if I'm in the crowd, I really focus on a specific subject and give details about it. So this is how I like to work, having two specific focal lengths that I don't necessarily bring at the same time, because when I shoot, I like focusing on different aspects that limits me through the focal length, basically. But those are the two lenses that I usually like to work with and that cover pretty much 90% of what I do for street photography. Let me know down in the comment if you have any questions, and if that was clear to you, if you enjoy this kind of content. Thank you for watching today's video. And if you've missed it, check out this video right here, where I talk a little bit more about the prime lenses that you should get for street photography. I'll see you there.